The leader of the opposition doesn't know what he's talking about. The people at the Health and Safety Executive, who are the regulator in the UK, are the people who have prepared this safety report for the government of Gibraltar. A safety report is a risk assessment. It's an assessment of the consequences of things going wrong. They're the ones who have a detailed methodology of what a safety report requires for these circumstances, not Daniel Feetham. Lloyd's Register Energy, or the people that Mr. Feetham and Spark had also contracted, have done the same for us. They have done a full safety report analysis of the potential for this LNG plant to go wrong. That is exactly what we said we would provide. It demonstrates that if there is an explosion, which would be very unlikely to happen in the context of a 1 in 3 million year event, then the consequences of that do not reach residential areas. All the things that Mr. Feetham scared people about, the experts, the real experts, the Health and Safety Executive in the UK, independent regulator through its Health and Safety Laboratory, and Lloyd's Register Energy, and nobody has spoken about the credentials of Lloyd's Register Energy more than Mr. Feetham, have all said that there are no consequences for residential areas. All the things Mr. Feetham said there were.
Nevertheless, the Lloyd's report says that a lot of other documentation is still necessary, things like a fire and safety assessment and an emergency response plan. Shouldn't you have that already, and isn't it rather reckless to proceed with the project without those documents?
No, not at all, because all of those things would need to be in place by the time that the facility starts to operate. But those things are going to be in place by the time the facility starts to operate. That is the normal thing to do. For example, when you erect a new building, if it's going to have X number of floors, you know that by the time you finish, you're going to need to provide safety escapes, you're going to need to provide the emergency services with plans, you're going to need to provide everything you need so that in the event of there being a problem, the emergency services can deal with it. Similarly, with this facility, we'll have to ensure that our emergency services are able to deal with the sorts of events that could occur in that type of eventuality. But you don't train your firemen, you don't train your police and your ambulancemen to be ready the day that you go for planning permission. You train them to be ready the day that you start operating.
Now, one thing that struck me reading the Lloyd's Register report in particular is that the worst case scenario outlined there is for a failure, a catastrophic failure of one of the 5 tanks. Why isn't it the worst case scenario failure of all 5, or of one having a domino effect on the others?
Well, because that's the assessment that they have made is realistic. The government has not asked them to only assess a failure of 1 tank and not of 5. Neither have we asked HSC to concentrate on what would happen if there was a failure of 1 tank and not 5. That is the assessment that they make of the possibility of failure. So if they're saying that the consequences of that would be 1 in 3 million years, then they must be saying to us that there must be 1 in 15 million year opportunity of all 5 failing. But in any event, the assessment is that the risk happens when there is a coupling of the arm to the vessel, when there's an event of the facility, the storage facility being filled. Remember that this assessment is done on the basis of that happening every day, happening all the time. In fact, that's only going to happen twice a month. So if it's 1 in 3 million years when it happens every day, if it only happens twice a month, it's much more reduced, because it's only going to be happening on 24 occasions, not 365 days.
But nevertheless, it does seem rather odd. Perhaps, as you say, it's very unlikely that all 5 storage tanks would have a failure. But surely, when they're in such close proximity one to the other, a problem in one could easily affect the others, couldn't it?
Stephen, I'm not going to comment on the likelihood or otherwise of that, because I'm not an expert in LNG. And the people who are, Lloyd's Register Energy and HSC, they are the experts. They are the ones who have determined that that is the right way to do this analysis of risk. So if there's a reason for that, they're the ones to know.
And just to be crystal clear about this, you announced yesterday that you've signed the contract with Shell. This is going ahead anyway now, isn't it, regardless of what the opposition or anybody else might say?
A decision has been made. The process has now begun. This is going ahead. This is the right decision for our future. People have been paying me for the last 4 years to be their chief minister, to make assessments and to make decisions. And with my cabinet and with the people who are responsible in government for giving us the advice and with the best possible advice in the world from HSE, and in addition to that, with the advice of Lloyd's Register, because the GSD played around so much with their original report, with all of that advice, we have made a decision for the future of Gibraltar. If we want a secure and reliable source of electricity powered by the cleanest fuel possible in the safest place possible in the geography of the area in Gibraltar, this is the facility. That's why it's going ahead.